In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can create this gemstone shape for our height map, or you can even use this as an alpha. We're going to be doing that here in Substance Designer. You can see that the graph is not too difficult at all. It's pretty simple. So let's get into it and I'll show you how this works. All right, so let's just move this little test graph out of the way and let's get started. First thing we are going to do is I'm going to do a search here for polygon, and we have this polygon 2 node. I'm going to use this. The way I like to think of this is like my base primitive. All right, so we've got our polygon 2. Let's come over to the sides and we're going to set this to a value of 8. Okay, so now we have 8 sides. We're going to need 2 of these shapes. So with this one selected, I'm going to just duplicate it. And this time here, again, leaving the sides at 8, but we're going to set our rotation. I want to rotate this. And what I want to do, again, thinking of these as base primitives, you can see that I have kind of these lines here. And what I want to do, let's just set this to 0. What I want to do is I want to create, or I want to rotate this shape so that this edge is right in the center of my document here in Substance Designer. And so to do that, I'm just simply going to come over and I'm just going to rotate so this lines up. And what I did was I just visually rotated it. It ends up being pretty much 22.5 is a good solid number, and you can see that lines up right in the center. So now we're going to be set for that. Okay, so let's go back here to our shapes. Now, like I said, we have this one. This is going to be kind of like our top shape, and this is going to represent the base of this primitive. So in order to start manipulating our shape, we can use different processes here in Designer. The one that works really well for this would be, especially for using gradients, is the curve node. So we're going to grab the curve, and we're going to plug it into our bottom shape first. So let's just plug this in. And you'll notice here that you have the ability to kind of work with the curve. And of course, you can just click here to create, or double click, you can create points and then start to create a curve. What's really interesting about this is you'll see that as we create these points and manipulate them here on the graph, we are actually creating a profile of our shape. So for example, let's set this here to linear. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just kind of move this shape, and now since I've already created one point, it automatically creates one here at the bottom. So I'm just going to click and drag, and you'll notice here that what I'm doing with this curve is we basically have the profile or the slope of what this shape is going to look like. And I'm just kind of playing around with this here so we can get what we want. So now you can see that I have the top, and then I have this slope shape, and this curve is kind of like the side profile of what that actually looks like. Another way to kind of visualize that is there is a node here in Designer that's kind of helpful. It's called the cross-section node. So if you just connect this in, and you've got all kinds of different drawing styles. I like the line here, and we'll just move this height scale down. This here gives me a representation of what this shape is actually kind of looking like, or I can get an idea of the cross-section of the shape. So anyways, just something to keep in mind if you ever need to kind of use a node like that. Okay, so now we have curve for this one. This is going to end up being kind of the bottom part of the shape. Let's do another one here for the top shape. So what I'll do is just duplicate this curve once more, and we'll plug this into what's going to become our top shape. And now I just need to change basically my profile shape here. So what I'm going to do is just simply lift the value up, and just so I can kind of keep this at a basic number. Let's just try 0.75. We'll probably have to change these a bit once we kind of get things in place, but now this becomes like the top piece. So if I now come into here and grab like a blend node, and let's put this one in the foreground. Again, think about this as the top part of the primitive I'm creating, and this one here is the bottom part, or the base of the primitive. We'll plug this into the background, and right now I'm leaving this to copy, but if we play around with the opacity here, you can see where we're getting these two shapes, and we're going to blend these together in just a bit, but we need some type of shape to blend that. And that's where I'm going to create another shape that I'm going to use as kind of like a way to trim some of these edges. So now what we need to do is create basically like a little triangle. So let's do that now. And of course, the way Substance Designer works, there's so many nodes, there's so many ways to do this. I'm going to show you a way, but again, you could do this any number of ways. So let's try this. Let's start with a uniform color. And we're going to set this to grayscale, and it's black. Okay, so let's duplicate this one. And so we'll have this black here. And now we need one that's going to be white. And all I'm using is this shape here. I'm just using this node as like a color value. That's it. I just want this white value. And what I'm going to do now is just simply grab a transform node here, and I'm going to plug this in. And of course, there are shape nodes, right? You could jump over here to like a shape node, and it depends on the nodes. Like this one might be a little bit heavier. You could try to get a triangle out of this. Or again, there's another node in here for polygon. You could jump into polygon, and you could play around with the sides until you basically get a triangle and then rotate it, so on and so forth. Lots of different ways. But like I said, I'm just going to show you kind of a different way that just gives you more techniques, right? It's always good to have extra techniques in the toolbox. All right, so transform. What are we going to do with this? Now, just like anything in Designer, if I grab the transform node and I move it around, you can't really tell anything because Substance Designer, if I hit the space bar, you can see it's tiling everything constantly. So let's undo that. We need to jump over to our base parameters, tiling mode. We'll drop this down, and we're going to switch it to absolute. Now, I can change my tiling mode to be no tiling. So with that in place, here in my 2D view, I'm just going to move my mouse outside of the texture space. You can see the icon turns into this kind of like corner arrow indicating that I can rotate. So if I hold down Shift, left click, I can snap rotate this. So I'm just going to do it one time to snap rotate it like this. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift using Alt or Option and left click and drag to scale this down. So we'll get something like that. Let's zoom in and take a look and make sure that we got everything kind of lined up here. And again, I'm going to zoom in at the top. You can see that it's, it's overlapping just a little bit, no problem. I'll just, again, using my Shift, Alt or Option, dragging it down, and now this is all in place. So what we end up getting here is this little diamond shape. Okay, so let's do this now. Let's go in and grab a blend. And this will all make sense right now. Let's take this shape that I have now that was driven by the uniform color and this transformation and plug it into the background. So I double click to view my blend. I can't see anything, nothing happens. But there is a kind of a cool functionality of the blend node that you can see here under parameters in this cropping area. You have left, right, top, and bottom. If I just move the bottom slider towards the right, I can reveal the actual shape. So I'm going to set this to 0.5, so it's right in the middle of my texture space, and now I have this triangle. So pretty cool, kind of an interesting way to use blends that you can use to kind of crop out shapes. And you can see I can do things here as well. I could, get something kind of neat like this with the, by cropping in on the left and the right sides, all kinds of interesting things you can do with this, right? We can even crop the bottom, get something like this. I don't know. There's lots of things you can do. However, I want to point out one thing, and that's why I'm telling you about using this other black uniform color. So right now, the way Substance Designer works, whenever you have a blend node, if you have one of the inputs, whether it be foreground or background, if they're open like this or nothing connected to it, mathematically, whatever's happening under the hood, it's not optimized in the Substance engine. So you kind of get a small hit to performance. So in order to get around that little issue, you can just take something blank like this black uniform color and just plug it in, okay? So all that's doing is, you could see it technically wasn't needed, but it just keeps things a lot more optimized. Now, another thing we can do, instead of seeing all these nodes like this, what I like to do is select a node. I'll hit the D key on the keyboard just to dock it. So let's do this. Let's just dock all these. And now I have this little shape tool here that I have. And you'll see we can use this over and over again to create this little triangle. So now that we have this triangle, I'm going to use this as almost like a cutting shape, something that I can use as like a trim dynamic for the edges that we're going to be working with here in our base primitive. But I need to basically replicate or clone this shape. And like I said, there's lots of ways to do that in Designer, but the one tool that I like to use for this, we're going to go, if I do a search for circular, you can see there's an option here for splatter circular grayscale. It's this one here. That's what we want to use. So let's grab this guy. We're going to take the output that we've been working on, our little triangle shape. We're going to plug it into the pattern input. And then now, let's close up that base parameter. It's kind of getting in the way. Let's come over to our parameters. We're going to set it to image input. So now we have our little triangles here. For the, let's see here, where is our pattern amounts at the top? We want that to be 8. That's the number that we're working with. Now, if we scroll down, here's where we can start playing with things like our radius. There's all kinds of options in here, but there's something I like to use towards the bottom, especially when I need to replicate a shape in a circle and I want them to be connected, is you can just click on this connect shapes. And you can see that what it'll do is it'll connect the shape. They're basically connected here. Although to do that, it did a little bit of stretching here. Now that could be a cool shape already. You know, it's pretty neat to make stuff here with this splatter grayscale node. But we need to adjust things. So we can, in this particular case, just use the y-axis, or you can even play around with this here and get different shapes, right? But we're going to increase the y. Now, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that, okay, well, I actually messed this up a little. It's 0.97. But even if I set this to 1, maybe they're not super, I mean, they are. It's by a pixel, but it's a little gray. So one thing I could do, you can always overdrive this. So if I type in something like 0.0, let's do 0.01 and hit enter, you can see now they're fused together a little bit more, okay? And that's what I want to do. And then if I want to play around with that aspect ratio of what these connected shapes look like, I can do that here just by playing around with this Y parameter size. And we'll probably need to do that here in just a moment. All right, so now I've got this little cutting shape, and here's where things are going to start to come together. Let's grab these guys. Let's move them down here towards the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our two shapes. We've got this shape here, which represents the base of our primitive. This shape is the top of this primitive. We're trying to basically fuse, or if you're kind of using ZBrush, we're going to like Dynamesh this together, if you think of it that way. And then we're going to use this kind of shape here as kind of like a brush, where we're going to do a little bit of trimming to create some planes on our mesh. So we're going to take this blend node, we're going to leave it to copy. When it's under copy like this, you've got foreground over background, and what's driving that is the opacity. Now, we're going to take our little cutter shape and plug that into the opacity, and when I do that, this is what we get, okay? So far, this is where we're at, but we need to make a few adjustments. So now, let's grab the splatter circular grayscale. We're going to left-click on it, and here's where I can play with the radius. So we're just going to move this into place like this, and you can see what I'm trying to do here. We've got this edge here, and now we're starting to get a plane in here. The values are a little bit off, but it's no problem. We can tweak that by using our curve node. So let's go to this top. We're working with the top area, and that's what this curve is adjusting, this little shape, and excuse me, this little profile. And now what I'll do is just play with this a little bit until I kind of blend this shape in. So check this out. I'm just going to play with it. Now, another thing I can do, and it's a lot of going back and forth between these nodes. And that's kind of the really cool linear, non-linear workflow inside of Designer. So, make a slight adjustment here. I'm going to select the circular grayscale. Now, instead of adjusting the radius, which I could do, I don't want see if I move the radius, it's going to kind of push too much. Actually, look, that looks pretty good, but not really. If I zoom in, look at this. You get a little bit of overhang here, which I don't want. So let's undo that. In this case, remember, I'm using my connected patterns. I can now take the Y value and just push this down like that. Look at that. Now we've got a pretty cool kind of plane that's kind of cut into this, and everything's blending together. So that's how we're starting to kind of build up this shape. So if you look at it, we've got our base here, sloping upwards. We've kind of trimmed in this little corner, and now we have our top. Okay, so we're already starting to build our shape up together with just these few little nodes that you see here. So far, so good. So now we need to add a plane to the bottom part here. So to do that, what we are going to do is we can probably just maybe reuse our scatter circular that we already have. So let's just duplicate that. And what we'll do is, let's see here. Let's go in and maybe we're going to have to adjust our radius. So we're going to move this guy up here. And I need to essentially invert these triangles. So if we scroll down, we have rotation. There is a pattern rotation for degrees. Let's set this to 180. So now we'll get something like this. And again, like I said, we can go in and just adjust our radius. We'll see where this needs to go. This is all going to be things that we need to adjust, especially the connected sides for the X and Y. But let's just get this into place and see what we're kind of working with first. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to create another blend. And this new shape is going to go into the opacity. And on this blend, we're going to use the blending mode set to copy once again. We'll move this guy up. Now, our previous shape that we've been working on so far, that is going to go into our foreground. And now we need to integrate kind of another plane here into the foreground for our blend. So to do that, we're going to start here with this shape, and it's going to be the one where the kind of our center line is in the middle of our document. This is going to work. And I'm just going to break off another curve here because we're going to make some adjustments. So let's just duplicate this curve, and then we're just going to plug this here into the blend. Now, if we take a look, this is what we have so far. So this is kind of in place. It's not right. We need to make some adjustments, but this is where we'll get in and start making some of these adjustments. So let's go to the curve first, and let's start just playing around with these values. Now, what I want to do is I want this base here to be dark. So let's just move, let's see here. Let's just make the adjustments that I need. Probably pull this in. So again, I want this base to be a little bit dark, and then it's going to transition up a little bit and become a little brighter. So we'll do something like that, I think. Again, we're just going to keep messing with this until we get what we have in place. Now, let's go back to our little shape here, and maybe I need to adjust the radius slightly. Let's do that. And also, if I need to, I can also play with this Y value here. And what I want is, if I zoom in, I just want kind of the points of these two planes, these two triangular planes to connect, basically. And I'm just kind of using my eye to kind of guess where that may be. All right, so that's in place. Let's come up here. And now this is just kind of the part where we just start playing around with just integrating and blending everything together, right? So again, I'm just kind of playing with these little shapes here. Let's maybe go back to this main profile and see what we can do with this. So you can see I'm just kind of playing here. Let's see what this is. Okay, bring that down, bring that up. All right, let's take a look at this one. Okay, and like I said, it's just a matter of just playing around until I kind of get these shapes where I want them to be. Okay, and already I think that's looking fairly decent, right? Okay, so right now though, we have some kind of weird kind of intersecting areas out here, and we need to take care of that first, and then maybe we can make some more changes once we get everything kind of fully integrated. So what I need to do is just kind of basically trim out or cut off this outside edge here for the circle. And that's going to be pretty easy to do. We already have this shape we've been working with. So I'm going to go and grab a node here called threshold, and we're going to connect threshold. And then I'm just going to play with the threshold, and you can see that, just kind of snaps. It's basically taking all of these gray values and just, applying a threshold, pushing everything here to white, and so we get this. And then we're just going to use this shape. Let's grab another blend node. We're going to put this into our foreground. Let's take the combined shapes that we have so far. We'll put this into the background. Now, in this case, we are going to set the blending mode to multiply. Okay, so now this is going to act like a cutting piece. Now, all we need to do to get everything to line up is come over to that threshold and just drag it in until this basically lines up like that, okay? And so now you can see that we're starting to create that overall kind of diamond shape. And then, like I said before, it's just a matter of going in and just tweaking and just setting things up until you get it to where things are blending enough. So check this out. If I move this one, it's like I'm starting to the way it reminds me is it's like I'm like inside my 3D modeling program. I'm selecting all the verts at the bottom, and I'm just kind of scaling them inwards. So that's kind of what we're doing here with that. So look at that. That's good. And now we're getting some of this kind of shadowing here, and this fall off looks pretty good. So we'll do maybe something like that. Okay, I like that shape. And let's go over to this one and just play with these as well. Let's see what we can do here. Just get these guys to integrate in. That looks pretty good too. So again, like I said, it's just a matter of playing around, seeing what we get here. And then finally, maybe we'll play with that last one a little bit more. Let's see. I'm just kind of bringing that up. There we go. Okay, and that's it. That's our shape. Okay, so at this point, if we wanted to kind of scale this up to kind of fill more of the space, we could. You could just, whoops, not a text. We are going to add a good old-fashioned transform here. We'll pull this guy in. And then, again, holding down Shift-Option, left-click and drag, and we'll just scale this guy up so it just fits the whole screen, right? So we can do that. And then if we want to rotate, we can, so on and so forth. But this becomes my overall shape now. And that's my height. So now I have this height shape. I can use this with displacement. I could use it as an alpha and take that into Substance Painter or use it somewhere else. If I want to create a normal from this, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to grab my normal node. It takes a height as an input. We'll plug that in. And then for the intensity, you can drag it up to 3. Can't really see what's going on. You can really overdrive these. So if I set this to something like, say, 64, there you go. I get this nice normal. And it's a little hard on the edge, so another option could be to jump down to this one, normal Sobel. Let's try this. Plug this guy in. Same thing, set it to 64, and that can give a little bit of a smoother result. One more thing we can do in here, of course, is add, whoops, not that one, going too fast. Let's add a blur high quality grayscale. It's too much, right? So just very low intensity. Maybe something like, I don't know, we'll say 0.55. And then we can hold down, if I want to reconnect these lines real quick, hold down Shift, left click drag, reconnect. So now the blend is integrated into that. And then there we go. We can start to play around with that as well. Get that little blend in there if we need to. Same thing with that normal Sobel node. We can kind of back that up and down, increase or decrease the intensity. And so there's our shape. That's how you can create something like this here in Substance Designer. As you can see, it's not too complex, just a few nodes, and you can get this shape all set and ready to go for either using it as displacement or, as I like to use it, as an alpha for a brush inside of Substance Painter. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.